Welcome to IVF This, episode 185, IVF and Graduating. Welcome to IVF This. I'm your host, Emily Ginn. After 10 years of primary and secondary infertility due to both male and female factor infertility, I am now the mother to 3 beautiful miracles. I am married to my favorite person in the world. I'm a social worker, a life coach, and an IVF warrior. I'm here to teach you how to manage your mind and emotions during your IVF journey, to break free from anxiety and regain control of your life, even in the midst of infertility. I'm going to teach you how to say IVF this to how we think about, talk about, and experience infertility. Let's go. Hello, my beautiful friends. I hope you're all doing so well. I know you haven't heard from me in a while. It was the end of summer, getting ready for the transition back into school. And for those of you who've been asking, my knee is actually doing much better. It doesn't look like I'll have to have surgery. The physical therapy is very promising, and hopefully for myself and the rest of the people in my life, I will be able to get back to running very soon. I know that there will be a collective sigh of relief when Emily can get back to pounding the pavement. All right, so today we're going to talk about something that, it doesn't get a lot of airtime. It's something that's celebrated and we get excited about, but I don't think that we really pay close enough attention to the transition from being in active kind of treatment, fertility treatments, and then moving to graduation. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about graduating, what that means, what it is, and all of the various things in between. So, it's an interesting phrase, like graduating from IVF, and it conjures up images of caps and gowns, and wouldn't that be kind of a fun visual for us to get like a cap and a gown and have some pomp and circumstance playing while we move our tassel over? Because it is kind of this moment where it's like, congratulations, you're pregnant. We're releasing you into the wild with your regular OB. And on paper, that sounds amazing, right? And it's usually sometimes delivered with like balloons, hugs, a big hooray. It's something that certainly my IVF clinic, there were a lot of like tears and hugs and happiness. But here's the thing. For many people, graduating comes with some very complicated feelings, as most things in life do, right? Joy, fear, relief, grief, and even some confusion. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So what does graduation really mean? So when your clinic says that you've graduated, it's not just about moving on from your fertility team to your OB. It's like a whole bunch of transitions happening all at once, right? On the surface, it feels like a celebration, and it should be. Like, I want to make this very clear. Just because this is the topic at hand doesn't mean I don't want you to celebrate graduating. I absolutely do. I just want to show you that it's, I think, more emotionally and mentally complex than we ever would consider it to be. Underneath this graduation is so many layers. Like, for one, you're often told or the discussion to taper off of the medication that you've been on that helped you kind of get here in the first place. If you've been taking progesterone, estrogen, combination of both, maybe a couple of other medications, your body and heart have kind of gotten used to this routine. So those injections, those patches, the pills, the suppositories, whatever it is, it kind of becomes a little bit of a lifeline, like a tether to what I have control over. They feel like your safety net. And now someone is saying, okay, but you don't need to take those meds anymore. Like, you can stop. It's okay. And so that can feel absolutely terrifying, completely terrifying, because those meds weren't just hormones, like they are, but they're also a symbol of your security, right? And then there's kind of the rational side of it, right? By this point, you've likely spent months, maybe even years in and out of this clinic. I knew my fertility doctor for, I think it was a total of like 6 or 7 years. I hadn't seen her through that entire time, right? It was just kind of picking and choosing. But her and her medical assistant became huge parts of this journey for me, right? You're going to multiple appointments every week. You're doing blood draws. You're doing ultrasounds, phone calls with your nurse or the nursing assistant. They have seen you from your most hopeful and sometimes to your most devastated. They know your partner's work schedule because they've kind of helped coordinate around it. They know your schedule. They know your sexual history very intimately, right? In many ways, your clinic staff becomes kind of an extended family. But now you have to say goodbye, not just to the physical clinic, but to those people who have walked along beside you in every kind of version or iteration of your journey. And that brings its own grief, because as excited as you may be to move forward, and you should be, you're also losing the closeness of that oversight, right? The comfort of being surrounded by people who by and large get it. And I think anyone who's listening to this podcast knows what I mean by they get it. And so here's the piece that I really want to normalize for you: that grief and fear you may feel in this transition is not a sign that there's anything wrong with you. There's not a sign that, if you're nervous about tapering off of your medication, or if you're really sad, it doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful or that you're not happy about graduating. It's actually incredibly common to have a mixed bag of emotions. In fact, most of the people never realize that that's what's happening. That what they're feeling is a kind of grief. It's so woven into kind of the fabric of your experience, so much so. And a grief like losing your safety net through this process, when you've already confronted fear and uncertainty, of stepping away from the people that have carried you through some of the hardest moments of your life. So if you have felt that ache, the fear of letting go, please hear me when I say you are not alone. This is an incredibly human reaction after this monumental shift in your journey. Now, I want to share a quick story. One of my clients told me, I really thought I would be over the moon the day that I graduated. And instead, I sobbed in my car because I realized, what if something goes wrong now? Who's going to catch it? And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that really sums this graduation milestone. It's a milestone. It's not the finish line. And what can be particularly tricky is trying to explain to people that haven't gone through IVF, right? You might tell someone close to you, I graduated from my clinic today. And because of their innocence, or really just a lack of familiarity, they may assume, oh my God, that's the most wonderful news. And they're just assuming in 6, 7, 8 months, there's going to be a baby. Here's the thing. In IVF, graduating isn't the same thing as a guaranteed baby. It's just the next step, right? We're gauging our entire journey on these milestones that we set up. And for people who are not as familiar or not as informed as others, it can kind of seem like, oh, this is a shoo-in. Your baby is going to come. But that isn't always what it means. Typically, graduation happens somewhere between like 8 and 10 weeks of pregnancy. It's always clinic dependent, which means from the outside, people might hear and think that you're practically at the finish line. But from the inside, it's just another marker on this incredibly long road. And in the gap between your last fertility treatment and your first OB appointment, there's usually, not always, but usually a time period where you don't have anyone checking your labs. You don't have ultrasounds. You don't have that constant reassurance. And what most people do in that space is a lot of symptom spotting. We become the Sherlock Holmes of symptoms, right? We're paying close attention to every single cramp, every wave of nausea, every breast tenderness, in the presence of those and in the absence of those things. Not because you're obsessive, but because it's your brain's way of trying to self-soothe. It's very normal, very human to reassure yourself, okay, things are still on the right track. So when other people get excited for you, kind of throwing confetti, talking about baby names, assuming you're in the clear, there can be this like strange tension that exists because you might not feel safe to celebrate yet. And that's okay, right? It doesn't make you negative or ungrateful or anything. It just means your nervous system is catching up to your reality. And that can take a while. I know for me, it took probably until like the 20-week ultrasound, maybe even 24 when we
24 weeks when we get to viability, before my nervous system was like, okay, I'm kind of ready to accept this as our reality. Totally normal. And on the flip side, it's also okay if you do want to celebrate. Like if you want to throw yourself a little graduation party, take yourself out for a nice dinner, mark the milestone in some meaningful way, go off. Like do it. There is no wrong way to acknowledge this transition, even if you're not acknowledging this transition. But the through line is this. There is often a misalignment between how you thought you'd feel and how you actually feel. You imagine that you're going to be bursting with relief and joy, and instead you might find yourself still very cautious, overwhelmed, or maybe just feeling kind of weird. And that can be jarring. And that's the truth of graduating in IVF. It's almost never just one feeling. It's usually a mixed bag of excitement, fear, trepidation, gratitude, grief, hope, all at the same time. And again, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Just means you're human. Now, I want to talk about something that is really at the heart of this whole graduation conversation, and that is something called the arrival fallacy. The arrival fallacy is a cognitive bias, which is a way our brain is wired to think. And here's the kicker. Everybody has it. Nobody escapes without this one, okay? And this is a really important qualifier before I talk about it in depth. The arrival fallacy isn't just about wanting something. It's about believing that once you achieve something, you will finally have lasting happiness. That once you get the thing that you want the most, whether it's the baby, a promotion, more money, a car, a house, getting through a tough season, then you'll get to feel carefree, protected, and safe from pain. Our brains overgeneralize to such an extent because they have to, right? We truly do want to believe once I have this, I won't feel this pain anymore. And you know what? You probably won't feel the same pain that you felt. You probably won't feel the sting of the IVF shots and the morning monitoring appointments once you've graduated. You won't feel the kind of ache of being overlooked at work once you land this new job, right? That is true. But here's what our brains leave out the most. You'll still feel other pain. You're still going to feel other pain. It's just going to take a different shape. It's just going to look different. The anxiety of trying to settle into a pregnancy, the stress of navigating a new job, the worries about whatever next milestone you're wanting to achieve. And I kind of want to share something really personal here. And I don't know if I've talked about it. Maybe I have. We're 185 episodes into this thing. But I do want to share it because I've lived the arrival fallacy, right? When we first started trying, we didn't know at the time that we had both male and female factor infertility. Yes, I said both because apparently my husband and I are the consummate overachievers. It took us 18 months to get pregnant with our oldest. And that was after multiple tests, 2 gynecological surgeries from me. And yes, I was over the moon excited. I had like what I would consider like a tough but relatively like quote unquote normal pregnancy. And then I delivered him. And then my entire world flipped upside down. Not just in the way that everyone tells you that your entire world flips upside down with a new baby, because that is true. For me, I was hit with an insane amount of postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. Now, I've always been a little bit prone to anxiety and depression, so that part didn't shock me a lot. What did shock me was how I thought I would feel versus how I felt. I thought that I would be flooded with love and connection from the very first moment I laid eyes on him. And that's like the story that we're sold, right? This perfectly curated Instagram photos, the women saying they fell in love with their baby at first sight, right? That was not my experience, not even close. And I can remember standing in the shower, sobbing, like machine gun fire sobbing, saying to myself, this is what you fucking wanted. It's a super helpful thought, right? But that was the arrival fallacy in real time, right? My experience didn't match the image I had built up in my mind, the image the whole world told me I should have. And my mental health suffered deeply, deeply for it. And that's the danger of the arrival fallacy, not the milestone itself, but the misalignment between how we expected to feel and how we actually feel. The gap is the thing that messes with our heads the most. It can convince you that you're broken, ungrateful, or doing it wrong. Here's the truth. You're not broken. You didn't do it wrong. This is just how the arrival fallacy plays out in IVF, in parenting, in careers, in life. And just so you can really see how universal this is, I want you to pause and think of a time in your own life. Maybe you got the degree, or you bought the house, or you finally landed the job. Do you remember what you thought you were going to feel when you got there? And then, what did you actually feel? Was there a gap? Was there a little bit of a disappointment? Maybe there was some confusion as to why you weren't floating on cloud nine, right? The gap. That's the arrival fallacy. So the next time you catch yourself thinking, once I get there, then I'll get to finally feel safe, calm, peaceful, happy. I just want you to pause. I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to remind yourself, this is not about eliminating pain. It is about recognizing your resilience and knowing that you can carry both joy and the struggle together. So if graduating is layered and the arrival fallacy is sneaky, what the hell do we actually do with all of this? How do we move forward when the reality doesn't match up with the pictures in our head? I think anyone who's listened to this podcast for any length of time knows the first thing I'm going to say is awareness, right? Just naming what's happening is huge. If you notice, oh, this is fear or disappointment that I'm feeling, and I wasn't expecting to feel that. I expected to feel this other thing. So maybe this is that arrival fallacy that Emily was talking about. When you do that, you have already created space between you and the thought, right? You've already given yourself that glorious moment of reflection. So the second thing is what I call the gift of and. And I think I had a podcast episode on kind of the magical, I have two magical words, yet and and. And I love those two words so much. But it gives yourself permission to hold two seemingly opposite feelings at once. I'm grateful I graduated, and I'm terrified. I am thrilled for this next step, and I'm grieving whatever it is you're grieving. I'm grieving a little bit of losing my clinic, losing the safety net that I felt. All of those can be true at the same time. It's not neither cancels the other out. The third thing is grounding yourself in the present moment. Our brains love to future trip, right? What if this goes wrong? What if I never feel safe? Instead, I want you to ask, what is true right now? What is the information that I have that I can like really rest in? Not whatever drama safari my brain wants to take, but at this moment, I have no reason to believe that I'm not still pregnant. And that helps you get too far into the spiral, too far into the what ifs. And the fourth thing, which is probably my favorite thing in the world, compassion. Compassion, 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 self-compassion. Can you talk to yourself the way that you talk to a friend in the exact same situation? If your best friend were to tell you they felt scared after graduating, you wouldn't say, well, why would you feel scared? You should just feel grateful. You'd probably say something like, of course you feel scared. This is a massive transition. So try turning the same kindness towards yourself. And finally, I want you to remember this, and I'm going to say it again. I said it earlier, but I think this is the most important thing. The goal is not to avoid pain. You cannot. Life is 50-50. 50% of the time is going to be amazing, and 50% of the time is going to be terrible. And it's supposed to be. We have to have that natural balance. And so pain will show up again in different forms and at different times. The real goal is to grow your capacity to carry it, to recognize that you are resilient, that you can feel scared and keep moving, that you can hold grief and joy simultaneously, because you already do. You probably just don't give yourself credit for it. So here's what I want for you instead. Please don't focus on chasing a pain-free life. Not only is it futile, it's also really frustrating because, again, you can't get there. That's not possible. So focus on building your capacity to navigate the inevitable ups and downs. Focus on recognizing where your resiliency lies, because the real quote unquote arrival isn't never feeling pain again. It's knowing that you can feel pain and still move forward. And that is my wish for each and every one of you. Give yourself the freedom to be human, to be just a messy, messy human. Because you are, like, just like me and just like every other person on this planet. Go be messy. Be messy and loving and scared and resilient and all of the things in between. And that is what I have for you this week, my friends. I hope you have a beautiful time, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of IVF This. If you like what you've heard, click subscribe and follow to make sure you don't miss an episode. And if you want to learn more, head over to www.ivfthiscoaching.com to learn how to work together.